So without further ado, I would like to introduce Dr. Karen Vaughan, who was kind enough to join us today. Karen Vaughan is an associate professor of pedology at the University of Wyoming. And strangely enough, I don't know why, but if I was ever to live in a different part of the States, Wyoming is where I'd live. There's something about that space that just kills me. I love that space. I went through there as a child. It's phenomenal. Anyways, and a co-creator of the outreach and education space for the love of soils. I know last year we were lucky to be in Instagram contact and we had this obsessive attachment train to your Instagram posts, and we learned about you and the art of soils. We've been big fans ever since, Karen. So thank you for your insight and your enlightenment into the world of soils, appreciating it in ways that we can definitely harmonize with you. So thank you. If anybody has the time, please check out her place, For the Love of Soils. It's phenomenal. So prior to entering a career in academia, Karen was a soil scientist with the USDA NRCS, Snow Survey and Soil Climate Analysis Network. Dr. Vaughan's research traverses applied environmental biogeochemistry and pedology through the exploration of soil evolution and ecosystem processes across scales. Wow. She also works with other scientists to explore the distribution and implications of diversity and inclusion within the field of soil science. Karen dedicates time to sharing soils information across a variety of platforms because she feels strongly about the importance of effectively communicating science and the role scientists play in science delivery to the public. So thank you, Karen, for sharing what you do. Can't wait to hear what you have to say. Welcome.
Okay, how does that look? Do you see the full screen? Yep, okay. Thank you, Tatiana, for that lovely introduction and also for the invitation to speak to this group. It's a group that I haven't participated with in person yet, but I've thoroughly enjoyed your Instagram feed, and I especially appreciate Margaret for reaching out. Yeah, it's an interesting world we live in where our communication is now far-reaching. I think I would challenge you to spend a winter in Wyoming, Tatiana, because it's real. I've lived in New England, Idaho, Utah, and Wyoming has real winters. We're up at 7,200 feet here, and it's not.
I accept the challenge because winter is my favorite season. I will take on your challenge for sure.
Awesome, because I could use a flush of energy for the oncoming winter this year. But that aside, Wyoming is an absolutely wonderful place. And so I was asked to talk with everyone today a little bit about horizons, and I'm going to get literal on horizons and heterogeneity and really just curiosity of soils. So the title here is Soil, the Co-Living Foundation. And that's because I think it's very clear that this group understands that soils are a living entity and we are co-evolving together. And so that's why that's there. So I am respectfully delivering this talk from the native lands of the Arapaho, Cheyenne, and Sioux indigenous communities, past and present. And the suite of soils you see here are from all over the southeastern United States. They're not from Wyoming, but we'll dive in here. I really appreciate Igor's prompt to define soil because I think it depends on my mood. It depends on why I'm talking about soil. It depends on why I'm interested about soil. But I'm about to put up a definition of soil that is sort of a standard definition published by the Natural Resources Conservation Service. And so we're going to walk through this pretty slowly. Soil is the unconsolidated mineral or organic matter on the surface of the earth that has been subjected to and shows the effects of genetic and environmental factors of climate, organisms conditioned by relief, acting on parent material over a period of time. This should be a familiar, or it shouldn't be, it could be, it depends on whatever level of soils knowledge or interest you have. But I did hear, I think it was Paul mentioned the CLORPT model, or maybe it was Tatiana, but this is sort of how we describe how soils develop they are acted upon by these 5, and there's even a 6th principle in there. So to sum up sort of a definition of soil, to me, soils are alive. They are a media for growth. They are active participants in all processes. They are their own ecosystems, and soils are worthy of our curiosity and concern. And I'm sure by the fact that you're here and engaged on this Friday afternoon, thinking about urban soils and soils in general, I would like to hope that you also agree with that. And so what I want to dig right into is this idea of recognizing horizons. And so also what I heard Tatiana mention is that we as humans have this innate need to categorize and compartmentalize and put information into consumable containers. And the same is true with soil science, with humans that interact with soils, but it's a powerful mechanism that allows us to communicate. And without those categories, we may have a different understanding of what we're looking at. And so by using this horizon nomenclature, we can communicate appropriately. And so I'm going to actually walk through the horizons that are common in soils. And I'll start with the ones that are very often described. Maybe organic horizons are a little less so described in urban environments, but these are O horizons. They're dominated by soils that have high soil organic carbon, above 12 to 16%. There's a sliding scale. They're usually dark in color, and they are usually pretty light and fluffy, so a low density. A horizons are also dark in color because of organic matter, but they're mineral soils. And so mineral soils are, thinking of sand, silt, and clay. So mineral particles that are complex with that organic matter that is either coating those grains or they've formed aggregates. Not every soil has every horizon, and E horizons are, I'd say they're a little bit more rare, but the rest of these will all be mineral soil horizons. They're light in color due to leaching, so the removal of material. So maybe it's clay or organic matter or iron and aluminum oxides that have been leached out of that horizon, out of that layer, and then deposited in a subsurface zone, a B horizon. And B horizons are characterized by some kind of change. Something's going on. Maybe they received that leached material into that zone of accumulation, like clays and metals and salts, or there's some sort of structural development that's resulted in it being different from the parent material. And then there's C horizons, and these are mineral soils that have the properties of that parent material, that material that the soils are formed from, but they're unconsolidated, so they're diggable, they're loose. And parent materials can be anything from floodplain deposits to volcanic ash deposits or glacial till, as Paul was alluding to with the glaciation in New York City. So a lot of different types of parent materials, bedrock, for example. But because I'm speaking to an audience that is focused on urban soils, I thought it was really important to cover two features that are sometimes left off of our horizonation in more natural systems. The caret is used to denote horizons that contain human transported materials. So something that people purposefully, maybe not, maybe I don't know if it's purposefully or it could have happened through human activity. But what you're looking at here in these two profiles, this top one is a real special soil to me for many reasons. I run by it a couple times a week, and every time I run by it, it's different. It's a different light, or maybe the creek has eroded away a little bit more of that soil to reveal that subsurface iron oxide. But the material on the top is all gypsum mine spoils. So there was a gypsum mine there and it was reclaimed and this material was retransported. And then this bottom picture is showing some very obvious human transported materials. And I know it's a little picture, but there are bricks and glass bottles and human refuse that is there, and that would have a caret. And there's one more. There is a capital letter horizon, the M horizon. And this is a human manufactured layer that is root limiting. And so what you're looking at there is asphalt. This is a block away from my house in Wyoming. Probably it's the second least densely populated state in the United States. So other than Alaska, we've got a lot of open space, but we still have urban soils because, as was alluded to, at least I think in the mission or the information on your site, is that most people live in an urban environment. And sometimes that's high rises, and sometimes that's Laramie, Wyoming, where the tallest building in the entire city is a 10-story dormitory that we have. So anyway, horizonation can get pretty exciting and pretty nuanced, but I thought I'd share those with you. So what I want to do now is sort of move into this idea of soils being complex and variable. And so I like this statement here. A combined above ground, below ground approach to study community and ecosystem ecology enhances our understanding of the regulation and functional significance of biodiversity and the environmental and human-induced global change phenomenon. If you consumed that, that's wonderful. I know it's a lot to consume in 10 seconds of reading that. But the main idea is that by considering the above and below ground in tandem, we can better understand all aspects of global change. And what I mean by that is we can't study soils or systems above or below in a vacuum. And we have to think holistically. Even if you study nanoscale soil mineralogical properties or global scale soil carbon contents across the entire earth, we have to think holistically about the above ground and the below ground and how those work in tandem to create these really heterogeneous environments. I'm going to put up one title of a paper, because it's a really powerful paper that I think cements some of these ideas that we all think and believe, but these individuals actually dove into the literature and studied that linkages among warming, carbon, and microbial dynamics are mediated by soil mineral weathering. And so I put a couple arrows in there: warming, thinking about global change; carbon dynamics as biogeochemical cycles; the microbial community as the biotic entity; and the soil minerals as abiotic. And the big so what take home from this particular paper is that the multidimensional heterogeneity, and that just means differences in soils across many scales and different scales, looking in different dimensions, leads to soil carbon stocks being one of the least constrained variables in the terrestrial carbon cycle. And so that I think that when you know that you don't know everything, that's where real change can occur, because people know that there's more to study, and that's been alluded to here already. So that heterogeneity, taking it back home to this formula published by Hans Jenny, is that soils are a function of climate, organisms, relief, parent material, and time. And there's another paper that has the ... And that ... is catastrophic events. And back in 1940, I'm assuming that Hans Jenny was thinking of volcanic eruptions and mass wasting events, landslides. But that ... is us. In addition to being soil organisms, we're also agents of change, and we know that. And we change systems quickly because, well, what we do is really impactful. And maybe to twist that to be a little bit hopeful is that humans have an inherent curiosity about learning. And so that's how I'm going to transition into this last point I'd like to make, is curiosity. We're all here for some purpose, but I assume that there is an inherent curiosity that you have with soils or urban environments. And I'm posing this rhetorical question at this point. What do you see when you look at soil? And by see, I mean feel, sense, think, consider, hear. What is it what energy you put out? What do you think of? And so I'll share with you that when I see a profile like this is a rangeland soil. It is a soil that's forming in West Laramie. There's some salt problems out here, but it produces pretty good forage for cattle and sheep. So my scientist lens sees this. I've gone through and outlined the horizons. I was fortunate enough to actually pick in the soil in the field. So I feel like this is a good representation. And I have categorized and I've drawn lines around because that helps inform the processes that are going on there. It helps me understand through a scientific lens what is happening out there. But as I've been learning over, I suppose my whole life, but I feel like in the last few years is I'm more than a scientist. I'm a whole person. And so when my actual whole self looks at soil, I see it differently. I interact with soils differently. I spend time with soils differently. And so we were pulling out big old aggregates that had this yellowish orange iron oxide lens and iron monosulfides, or those dark black colors, just colors that were surprising to see in arid systems. These are also gypsum rich. And so that got me thinking, what got me thinking is that beautiful yellow color. And I knew that the graduate student working on this project, she needed to have watercolor paints that were made out of this soil. And so I grabbed a whole bunch of these soils and shared them with her. And it allows us to communicate differently about soils, see soils differently, and just spend time thinking about things that we maybe wouldn't have previously taken the time to do. So all that being said, what do you see? What do you feel when you look at soil? All the reactions that you have are normal, they're natural, they're valid, and they're important. And I think, in fact, it's what makes us humans. Whole humans who are now able to have a conversation around and with soils in very, very different ways. And so these are just a couple of examples. This is a figure from that paper title that I shared with you, and it's a schematic of how those scientists are interpreting what's happening across those scales. These are common soil minerals and the beautiful colors that elicit emotion. This is an art piece that a friend of mine did while we worked on a project together. She made paper out of soil and plants and then created this gradation that really speaks to me as a soil scientist. So all that being said, we all interact and feel differently when we share experiences with soils. And I think that's part of the beauty. And it's also part of the connection. And it's probably why all of us are here in this venue, because soils connect us all. And so with that, I'll thank you for your attention, and I'm going to stick around for the discussion. So if anyone has questions, I don't know if Tatiana wants to field them then, but thank you.